What's going on, everyone? And Happy New Year! It's 2023. Can you believe that? It is 2023. It's amazing. I want to wish everyone a Happy New Year. I do know that there's some sad news going on across the entire tech industry and across some of the design jobs and divisions and teams and so forth. And I really feel bad and empathize with all of you and everything that's going on. So I think today's subject is really befitting to have a conversation around because of everything that's going on. And as usual, I am distracted by my watch. So what I want to talk about today is really something that, some people really think it's important. Some people think it's not, and I'll cover it in a minute. But I do want to thank everyone who have supported me for the entirety of last year. This YouTube channel have been a kind of a project for me to see if it's something that it's even going to happen or not. And it is happening. I mean, I've been having a lot of following unexpectedly. I'm not in the thousands, I'm not an influencer with millions of followings and whatnot, but to me, looking at the channel and seeing over 600 people thus far that have followed the channel and been watching the YouTube channel, the videos, and supporting me, reaching out with questions, commenting, responding, and so forth. It's amazing, and I'm super grateful for all of that. And I really hope that this year, this channel will get to even higher heights. I will try and post more regularly. I know I've been promising this last year as well, but unfortunately, life happens. I don't have too much time, and I get busy with other things, life, work, other projects, and everything else. So, but my commitment to you is always that I will keep posting and I will keep creating these videos on important subjects to you. And so, speaking of the subject, without further ado, let's hit it. All right, so what are the subject we're going to be talking about today is something that has been discussed and debated for a long time in at least design community or creative community that I can thus far see, notice, and hear about. And today is, I guess, really important to talk about this specific subject, and that is resumes. Why do I want to talk about resumes all of a sudden, even though I'm one of those people that technically don't really encourage people having resumes, but it's all personal preferences. It depends on the companies you're applying to, and we'll cover all this in a minute. But why is it important today? Why today? Today is January 2023. Tech industry is in some sort of a, as somebody mentioned in some of the articles that I've been reading literally yesterday, tech industry is having a midlife crisis. Yes, and it feels like it, and it sounds like it. So what is happening? I'm gonna briefly cover that. So, financial recessions and difficulties in markets going up and downs and whatnot, it's a natural occurrence of our capitalistic society. If you go back in history, you can literally see it happening every 10, 15, 20 years, give or take. Something happens, the industry or something goes up drastically for a steady 5, 6, 7, maybe 10 years or a little bit more, and then suddenly something happens and it plummets down. It is normal in as much as it's sad and it's painful and hurts a lot of people. Unfortunately, it impacts peoples and families directly, but that's just part of the realities of how we live and what's happening. I'm not saying this is good or bad. I'm not saying I'm for or against this. All I'm saying, this shit is happening regularly, and well, I guess some of us slowly and over time learns to live with that and be ready for that and cope with that easier than other people, unfortunately. But this is a time to talk about how do you get back on that horse? How do you get back into that settle and go out there and start looking for new jobs. Because believe it or not, the big tech is suffering right now, but the small and mid-level tech are not, and low tech as well are not. So as much as I see thousands upon thousands of jobs are being lost across all the big tech giants, I see thousands upon thousands jobs opening across early stage startups, mid-stage startups, low tech companies. Think about the low tech. So people don't necessarily know what low tech is. Low tech is companies are not considered to be high tech, such as manufacturing, real estate, sales, and all these type of things that they're not necessarily considered to be. They don't manufacture, create technologies. They utilize technologies in order to achieve their specific business goals. And so sometimes, or oftentimes, a lot of these companies build their own internal technology teams in order to build their own proprietary tech so they can utilize for their needs, like supply chains, manufacturing, temperature level measuring, and then the list goes on. You can look into all of these. Education, government. There's a lot of companies, a lot of industries that actually hire designers these days that people unfortunately don't really look into, because literally from day one of them realizing or understanding or learning about the design industry, it's all about Facebooks and Instagrams and Twitters and Googles and all these big tech companies that everyone wants to work at. So yeah, look into those. But today is not about that. Today is about resumes. And why all of a sudden I decided to talk about resume? Well, I think it's important to talk about resumes. I've been asked a lot of questions about resumes throughout the last couple of years. And people periodically ask me, should I have this or that? Should I have several resumes tailored towards specific industry or company, or reflecting my specific skill sets, or what I'm good at, or what I'm trying to get to, either UX designer, product designer, whatever that might be. So let's talk about that. Let's start with, what is a resume? Resume is essentially a collection or a historic collection of all of your activities in a professional manner, which means your education, your previous experience or experiences. You kind of list out your qualifications, your skill sets, your what are you good at, and the list goes on. People put a lot of stuff on resumes that may be relevant, may not, and so forth. Now, some people ask me about, should they have separate resumes towards separate different industries or separate different companies or separate different positions and so forth. And the one thing that I want to say, no. Do not fall into the trap of having multiple different resumes for multiple different purposes, because that's how you actually find yourself in this trap of applying for jobs, constantly trying to figure out, is this the resume that I should be sending here? Is this the resume that I should be sending here? And then eventually it goes so out of control that I've seen people actually sending wrong resumes for a wrong job position and not getting that job position because, well, they're viewed as, what the fuck? I received resumes, funny enough, for design positions, and the resume would state that the person is a web developer or server-side developer or an engineer or whatnot. I get it. Probably was somebody who was transitioning from engineering field into design, but because they were juggling these multiple different resumes, odds are they just hit the wrong button, selected the wrong file, hit send because they were excited, and boom, you're out of that position because you sent the wrong resume. So think about that. More so, resume, just like your portfolio, which I cover in another one of my videos, is essentially you reaching out to another company and saying, hey, this is who I am, this is what I've done, here are my qualifications, here's why I think I'm good and qualify for the specific job, here's everything that I've achieved, all of my accolades, everything that I've done, even maybe outside of this industry, but was great at it, and so forth. So think about it as kind of your life story condensed into a few pages to convince somebody that you're so great that they should look at you and they should reach out to you and they should talk to you and they should look at your portfolio. Now let's jump into portfolio just for a minute from your resume. Now, a lot of people ask me that question as well. Should I send my resume and portfolio on request, or should it be the other way around, or should it be both? Now here's the trick part. Even though I am recommending and will continue advocating people to have only one single portfolio, only one single resume that represents you and who you are, your belief system, your achievements, accolades, experiences, and so forth. When you send out and you create your applications, you need to know a few things. One is, if you are filling up one of those kind of a web-based forms where they ask you to either paste your resume or upload a resume so the system can recognize it and read for you, this is where it gets a little bit tricky, and this is where your resume should be a little bit more simplified. Why? Because these systems typically scan your resume and convert it into quote-unquote live text. That live text eventually being sucked into an automated system where it scans your resume, looks for all the keywords that is associated with the job description that you typically will see when you're applying for a job, and start matching it. If that match is not accurately done upwards, I think it's 65-ish% or thereabouts, then your resume is going to go into the ethos. Now, when you're applying to these companies, right, and you see all these different applications, when you're applying for a big corporation, big tech company, financial industry, insurance, healthcare, banking, government, and the list goes on, the one thing you need to keep in mind is odds are your resume or your application is not going directly to the hiring manager. It's going into an HR type division where odds are a lot of them have no fucking idea who you really are and what is really design and how to hire for design. So in that instance, what is happening is they're literally just looking at your piece of paper. And if that piece of paper is not capturing their attention in any kind of way, then they're just discarding it. And so your hiring manager, who's actually going to be looking at your portfolio, will never even see your resume or your application at all. So when you're doing that, make sure that your resume is polished. Make sure your resume tells your story. Make sure your resume is capturing attention, which doesn't have to be designed. People think that if they're going to put these visual elements and iconography and illustrations and colors and so forth into your resume, it will capture somebody's attention. It might, but that's not the point. The point is for you to write your resume in such a way that it tells who you are, where you came from, what are you applying for, and why do you think you're the best shit ever in literally the first three, 4, 5 lines of text. Some people do it in their objective or this little piece of block of text where people start the resume with, right under their first name, last name, contact information, things like that. Some people do something differently. I personally have a dedicated page just for my story of who I am, where I came from, and what am I about. And that literally starts with just the first page. If somebody gets to my resume, the first thing gonna see is my story. That's it, nothing else. But that's me. That's how I wanted to approach it. That's my style. That's how I decided to do this. And I've been doing this for a long time now. But it doesn't mean it's a proper way or the wrong way. It doesn't mean that this is what makes me successfully get jobs or not. It just means that this is what I believe in. This is how I decided to approach it. This is what I want my viewers of my resume to experience first. That's my choice. Your choice might be very different. However, it is important to tell your story. People typically don't. In the objectives, they use a very old kind of a BS thing of hoping to achieve career growth within your organization with successfully contributing to your product or team or blah, 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 blah. Cool. Well, does it mean anything? Odds are probably not. It's just a bunch of fluff that doesn't really explain to me or to the HR person, who are you? Why are you applying for this job? Why do you think you're good at what you're applying for? Where did you came from? What makes you different? And so forth. So a bit of yourself goes a long way, and not just basically a lot of fluff that makes them feel, oh, so nice. This person wants to do all these achievements and all these great things at my company or our company. No, that's not exactly how these things typically work. Again, I'm not an HR, not a recruiter, so you might as well reach out and ask recruiters. By the way, ADP List has recruiters and HR professionals. Do find them and book mentorship time with them and ask them all these questions. I'm just speaking from my own personal perspective and my experience of hiring people, working with different recruiters, working with some HR professionals throughout my career. Now, this is where it starts. Then your resume goes into about your education, your job experience, qualifications, skill sets, and so forth. The one big event, if you will, are we good on time? I think we are good on time. One big event and big thing that I've been seeing in resumes, I'm not the only leader in the industry that have seen these issues. People put scales or graphs right next to their software skills, tools, apps, and so forth, where they put Figma, Sketch, InVision, Adobe XD, Adobe Creative Cloud, and the list goes on with these little line graphs, right? 90%, 60%, 20%, 40%, 50%. Out of what? You're telling me that your skill level of Adobe Photoshop is 70 out of the 100 of what? Are you measuring against what data are you measuring this? So all of this is so useless. It looks nice, not gonna lie. It looks kind of cool. This kind of a graph type of thing. You're showing it in kind of a data visualization way, your skill set of different tools and software and apps and whatnot. Awesome. But it's useless, and it really does not tell me as a hiring manager how good are you really with these tools. We're gonna put that subject aside, the goodness of your skill level with tools. What you really need to concentrate on is not necessarily listing out how great you are with different tools, but more importantly, to kind of tell me what was the impact on the projects you worked on. Whatever those projects are, even if it's a school project or a personal project or for your friend or a family member or whatnot. That is the important part. When you're listing out your skills and what you're good at and everything you've done and achieved and so forth, your education level, your projects you worked on and so forth, what is important really is to understand if you went to school, what did you learn? Doesn't really matter which school you went to, but what matters is what have you learned at that school? What have you done at that school? If you're doing some kind of school project, then what was your involvement? What was the impact? If you did some project which is not school project but outside of project, even if you had half a year of experience or a year of experience before, tell me about your specific involvement in that specific project. What was the impact? You've done something, whatever that might be. What was the direct impact of whatever you've done to that specific product or to the company or to the user base? And the list goes on, right? Whatever that might be, but talk about your impact. Why, how impactful were you on that specific project? Now let's move on to your education. A lot of people like to kind of splatter and talk about, here is all the education I've done, all the courses I've done and whatnot. So before you list out all of your courses that you've taken, right, and that can be whatever education place, what you really should do is do a little bit of research that the courses you've taken, are there actually something that are being valued in the industry? Because I can give you one right now. the Google UX certification course or certificate course is really useless. So when I see that somebody's done only one single course, for instance, and this is the only thing that they've learned or they've taken, to me that means they haven't really learned anything. Why? Because it's peer reviewed. It's not necessarily a quality course. It does not actually teaches you where you've gone something wrong or correct, because your work is being reviewed by equally the same people as you are that are trying to learn. So with all the respect to Google and to their, I guess, maybe goals or aspirations to educate people in UX, they're not really teaching you anything. They're just teaching you some of the keywords in the industry and some of the, I guess, research methodologies that exist. But have you executed those methodologies correctly? Have you gone around executing them in the right place, the right time, for the right reason? No, they don't teach you that. So be mindful of these things. When you list out your education and what you have learned, be mindful of what exactly you're listing. Because sometimes, believe it or not, it can be more harmful to you than helpful. So really be mindful about it, do some research. Now, still on the subject of education, listing out and making a big deal about the fact that you went to some fancy university or college does not mean anything. I've met people that went through all the elite colleges and universities and worked at all the best companies in the world, and I still do not consider them talented or would want them on my team. Period. So having all these big names on your resume does not necessarily guarantee that you're gonna have a great career. It's not gonna guarantee that the next company is gonna hire you. So also be mindful about that. Be subtle. Don't be loud about these things. Don't try to make a big deal out of the fact that you either finished a big name university or college or worked at some big tech company, as I see a lot of people do that. That does not necessarily help you in any way, and in some way might actually harm you. So list out your previous experience in education in a subtle way. Don't make a big deal out of it. Be modest, if you will. Now, when you talk about your skills, when you talk about your skills, a lot of people like to start with the level of skill they have with different applications, software, and so forth. A lot of things that people do leave out of their resumes in their skill section is their human skills. Communication, empathy, compassion, friendliness, working well with others, great on the team, self-driven, whatever it might be, right? All the skills of what makes you as a human being, and not necessarily a machine that knows how to use specific software. So think about that too. When you're listing out your skills, talk about your human skills more than you talk about your software and technical skills. Think about that. Now, when you package all of that together, that would be essentially your resume, right? If you have any achievements such as awards, recognitions, you've spoken at some event, you've, been on a panel, you've been a mentor, an advisor, or whatnot, all of these things are important. List them out as well. But again, don't be too loud about it. Now, another thing to be really aware of is when you're talking about yourself, when you're putting all this together, do not, and once again, I've seen people do it time and time again, do not avoid talking about your previous experiences, even if they are outside of the design industry. If you've been a car mechanic, a lawyer, an architect, a pilot, a ship captain, whatever you might have been before, talk about it, and talk about how that experience have influenced you as a designer, guided you into this career change, for instance, if you're changing your career, and talk about why this specific experience from a previous quote-unquote life, professional life, how it will be impactful and helpful to you in the future as a designer. What do you bring extra to the table that others don't? And you're probably gonna hear me speaking about this throughout a lot of my videos and a lot of my talks, conversations, mentorship sessions, monthly sessions, and the list goes on, is the fact that do not avoid talking about your previous experiences, because it helps not only you to kind of see and cohesively speak about your entire story of how you started, transitioned, and became a designer, and what will drive you in the future as a designer, but also to me as a hiring manager, it'll tell me who you are. How did you make the transition? Why did you make the transition? What extra skill set do you bring to the table when I'm hiring? If I'm hiring and I'm seeing that you're, for instance, a lawyer, and let's say you're used to specialize in corporate law, just as an example. If I'm hiring, let's say at Google, if I'm seeing a designer with a degree or experience as a in corporate law, I'm like, shit, this person, while they're working on my product, can also have this legal head-on to like, maybe this is illegal, or that is illegal, or maybe we should not do that, or should not do that. Other designers might not have that. So you're already a little bit ahead of other people in line for this position. So yeah, talk about where you came from, your other experiences. That might actually be a stepping stone helpful to you to get that next job. Wrap it all nicely on the resume, and do not be afraid if your resume is not 2 pages but 3. It's okay. If somebody wants to read your resume, they will read your resume. There's no universal rule that resume should not or could not be more than 2 pages. It can. It's just a lot of the HR people, recruiters and whatnot don't really want to read 3 pages. It sounds a lot. But if you go outside of it and go beyond 2, it's absolutely fine. I've even seen people try to squeeze in their entire experience into 1 single page. That is an impossible task. Just talk about yourself. Obviously, don't splurge, don't go too far and too much. But do include things that you think are important that will be helpful to you. Another important thing is, please don't forget your contact information. Make your portfolio the first thing on your resume. Right under your name, your portfolio should be the most visible thing after your name. Resume after that, it's all great. But if you're sending that resume to a small startup or a mid-stage startup, odds are you're sending it directly to a hiring manager, and they will click on your portfolio before they even go through your resume. So make sure it's there. I cannot stress this enough. I've seen so many people fail in getting a position just because a hiring manager could not find their portfolio on their resume or an application when you submit one. To me, this is like applying for a job for being a cab driver and not including all the information about my cab driver license. Why will somebody hire me as a cab driver if I don't show them that I have a driver license specifically as a cab driver? For those of you who don't know, you do need a special license to drive a cab or a limo. Each state has different rules, but that's the requirement. So you have to have your portfolio front and center, right after your name or next to your name, or however you want to put it, but it has to be visible. And always practice content hierarchy on your resume. People don't pay attention to that as well. When I open up sometimes resumes, they all look the same as a wall of text. That is difficult to me to try and scan the resume and pick up on information that I'm looking for. So practice content hierarchy. Create 3 buckets as most important, somewhat important, and least important things. And structure your resume in such a way that when I scan your resume and when I read your resume, I start from the most important things you want to show me, and then I slowly glide down to the least important things that you want to show me. But because you've showed me the most important things on top, if you will, it makes my job as a hiring manager easier to quickly read your resume, quickly identify all the values that I think you might have, and see if you will qualify and be a good fit for the position I'm hiring for. So be mindful of that. Now, on that note, the last piece of information I want to share is color. Resumes don't need color. They can be black and white. Designing a resume does not necessarily mean that you need to involve color. For people who used to be graphic designers, it's a lot easier because as a graphic designer, you know how to design an empty page with just fonts. With just, even if it's a single font throughout the entire page, if you structurally put it correctly, in terms of the hierarchy, in terms of the weight, the sizing, positioning, spacing, and so forth, you can create an incredibly beautiful, elegant, simple, black and white resume. So I would encourage you to try and look at some other resumes, be inspired, not by text, not by what people say, but how people lay out the resumes. How do they utilize things as, font weight, sizing, spacing, and so forth in creating this much more appealing and elegant resumes. Think about that. It's important. If anything, you can go and watch. There's a lot of YouTube videos. There's a lot of documentaries actually on fonts and font layouts. I would even go and follow or find a book by Michael Beirut, who's been a graphic designer for decades. He utilizes fonts in many different ways really beautifully. So try that. Get inspired. Resume does not necessarily need to be a dry document that looks just like a Word doc that somebody just typed on their typewriter, which vintagey can be also a good look, by the way. But again, try to think a bit outside of the box. Try to not just splurge color to think that this will make it more beautiful or add visuals or illustrations or icons or whatnot, but try to be simple, minimal, elegant, basic, yet beautiful. On this note, thank you all for being here today. I hope this information was very useful. This is my first video of this year. Many more to come. There is a whiteboard on my wall here in the office, in my studio, and I am taking off different subjects that I've selected for this entire year. So once again, I want to thank you all for your time. I want to wish you a happy new year. For those of you who lost jobs, I'm really sorry about that. But don't get discouraged. There is a future. Keep going. Do not despair. Don't give up. Just keep fighting for what you believe in. Keep fighting and doing what you think is right. And I'm sure you will find a spot that you will really enjoy. It might be even a blessing in disguise if you're losing your job. Maybe the next one will be your dream job and much better for your overall health, mental health, family, your own personal being in general. You never know. As somebody once told me, every exit is an opportunity for a new entry. So think about it that way. Thank you once again, and as always, never stop learning.